I remember zigzag rows of suburban houses, short skirts with young legs, promise headed for the park. I realized we were lost. Where are we going? My 6 foot, prepubescent, statuesque goddess of a best friend shrugged her shoulders, aware almost there, crossing the waters of her brown eyes. I'm still trying to reclaim broken fragments of my mind, defined shoulders, a piece of a cable remote, the smell of smoke, a cigarette, ashed, empty beer bottle, coffee table, a couch riddled with penetration marks while pulling at the stuffing, peeking from its leather, waiting for you. My innocence became confused.
Welcome to the Business of Soul Searching. My name is Erin, and I invite you to join me as I travel the world challenging risk takers who have soul searched and came out on the other side to tell us their incredible stories. Are you ready for this? Hi everyone, so I'm here with Erica Buddington. I drove down from Rhode Island to New York to interview her, and I think by the end of the interview you'll figure out why I'm kind of so interested in her and why I was drawn to her. So how we met at a financial literacy networking event last year in Brooklyn, and it's funny because I met Erica, and after she performed, so she does spoken word. She's also an authoress, so to speak, an arts educator. And so how we met is, I don't know if you remember this. So how we met is she performed, and there were a couple other women of color that were performing and just telling about our brand and their brand and everything. So afterwards, I went up to her and I was like, thank you, like, you're so cool, whatever. And then so she asked me what I did, like, just like, what do you do? You're at a networking event. Do you, it's pretty standard. It's really not rocket science, right? So like I, at that point, hadn't created a platform yet. So I was like still transitioning. I know I wanted to run a business, but I didn't know how. And I have my bachelor's. And so like, I'm literally just like babbling at the mouth because I don't even know how to do like a pitch of any sort. So anyways, once I realized I want to do radio and develop this podcast, I was like, I have to find her. I have her book, Borrows Apart, so we'll be chatting about that later as well. And so I was like, I asked her, I reached her, I was like, can you be on my show? And she obliged, and here we are. So anyways, so that's how we met, and so it's just funny. So you're in Brooklyn, New York, but you were saying you're from Long Island.
Yes, I'm from Long Island. You
When did you move?
I moved when I was about 9 years old from Brooklyn.
Okay.
My family lived in Flatbush, and my parents were a little concerned about the schools, and they wanted me to have different opportunities. And so at the time, they felt like Long Island was best.
Okay.
And so that's where I ended up.
Oh, okay. No, I was going to say that's kind of like a drastic change,
it is,
right?
It's a super shift.
Okay.
Yeah, so
how was that for you?
It was different, right? I was with my family here, and we're in abundance. Like we all lived in the same house. Like it was like a 3-floor house, and then like my grandma was on the floor. First floor. Yeah. My uncle and aunts were on the second floor, and then my mom and dad and I were on the third floor.
Oh my goodness!
So that's how Caribbeans do it. We bring each other up.
I knew you were. I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask.
I'm Jamaican and Cuban.
Okay, got it.
So we bring each other up one by one, and then we all live together until folks can afford to start moving out on their own. And so living in Brooklyn was just an amalgamation of culture. Like it was like walking down the street. And,
it's all here.
You're dealing with the jerk chicken spots and the smoke coming out of the grills, or you're at the trendy spot and you're getting your roadie wrapped. You're at Bobby's department store. You're getting your barrels so you can go fill it up and send it back home to the folks who need things. Yeah. And so to leave that was really difficult because the area of Long Island that I lived in was predominantly black, but it was really
like I don't want to say high class, but
not really high class. I was like
upper
middle class.
Okay, got it.
And a little whitewash at the time. It became more black as we began to live there. But we were right next to Hofstra University, so it was like the college kids were on our block all the time. It was just different, and I didn't really see the culture blend that I had in Brooklyn, and so. That was tough.
Of course, yeah.
So I ran away every chance I got.
You're like,
I was on Long Island Railroad every Friday night, and I was gone. And my parents would be like, when you come back? I'm like, Monday. When school starts, I'll be back. But, that's why I'm back here in Brooklyn. Okay, I graduated from Hampton. My parents I stayed with them for maybe about 6 months, and then I was like, nope, I gotta go to Brooklyn. And that's how I ended up here.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Let's talk about before we kind of get onto all the things that you do. I was looking at your website. I'm like, holy crap. No, but so I don't know if it's called group economics, but you were talking about living together. I don't know if it's just in the Black community, but I feel like we're so fearful to live all families together, and some pieces of it. And so I think it's so valuable. What you were saying is that you were living together. Everyone was living together until you can afford to then move out.
Yeah.
So that's big. I mean, it seems like cultural for you.
It is cultural. I feel like every family cohort, like in my family, my mother's side, father's side, has lived together at some point. Right? So I even had an aunt who has like 12 children, and they all lived in the same house. And like even when 2 of them got married and had kids, they had their own like section of the house. The house was so big, and that's what it was. Like everyone was putting into the mortgage, everyone was paying the light bill, everybody's paying the cable, the internet, and then slowly but surely, folks start to move out and get their own houses, and no one moved into apartments, no one rented, everyone's buying their own houses.
That's save money. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
So it's definitely a Caribbean thing, but society places such an emphasis on independence that folks feel like they have to leap.
Oh my gosh!
Right? And go and get an apartment right away, or a roommate or whatnot. And really, you can go home. There's nothing wrong with going home. Like, as long as you have ambition and you can pay for your own items, like living at home is not that big of a deal. I don't live at home anymore because that's more of like a mom, dad, get on my nerves.
Yeah. I hear you on that.
Like when you're 25 and they're like, so where are you going? When are you coming back home? I'm like, oh, okay.
What are you eating? Why aren't you wearing your raincoat? And you're like, oh, okay, we really need to get out of here.
I went to college for 4 years without you, and I survived.
I know.
So that's I love them, but I'm the only child.
It's time.
So I need to live on my own.
Cool.
Yeah.
But no, I think there's so much value in that. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, like we're turning this into like it's only attractive to live on your own, and it's like in some cases, yes, it makes sense, and if you can afford it, you can afford it. But if it's such a cost to do that, why not prepare yourself at least first? Like you said, you lived there for 6 months, so that was enough for you to like figure out, okay, where do I want to live, and all that. So that's good. Good. So, I mean, while we're on the topic of schools, you're talking about kind of changing schools and everything. So you're an arts educator. So you do spoken word, but you also kind of incorporate that a little bit into what you do for work. So how did that get started?
Okay, so I wanted to write the Great American Novel, which I'm still not done with yet.
Okay.
But a friend of mine, she knew that, and I was immersed in substitute teaching at the time, and it was eating up all of my time. Like
what did you go to school for?
So I went to school for English arts and education.
Got it. Okay.
So a lot of my friends were like, "We know you want to write the Great American Novel," so they were actively looking for jobs all the time for me. Because I was substitute teaching from 7 to 3. And because the junior high school I was substituting at was one that I went to as a kid, like the teachers were way too comfortable, like because they knew me.
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey girl, help me grade. Hey girl," and then because I wanted to have good rapport,
of course,
I would do it. But it was eating up my writing time.
Yeah.
So my friends were like, "No, we got to get you out of there." So a good friend of mine, Blue, she calls me. She goes, "I found a part-time writing position at Harlem Children's Zone. It's $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And it's literally 20 hours a week. And I feel like you can sustain your lifestyle and still have writing to do, like writing time rather." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." So I ended up doing that.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it, and it was over. She should have never introduced me to it because next thing I knew, I was the sophomore writing coordinator, then the senior writing coordinator, then the director of curriculum management. Then I was like the director of their whole arts program. And so I was very immersed, and it ended up eating up my life. Like I went from needing a part-time job to having a BlackBerry and like being told that it had to be available 24 hours, like 7 days a week. Wow. So, I mean, it was a shift. And I mean, it's always been here because my mother, she works, she's a social worker. Mm-hmm. She's way more than a social worker, if I can't even tell you her job.
Social work is much, got it.
She's like up
she's
there
at that
in the
level,
social work department.
Awesome.
And so she was always like that.
like BlackBerry on hip, like her regular phone. It was like, I gotta go, I gotta save this child. I used to see her and I'm like, I am never going to be like you.
And yet, here we are.
And sure enough, I became her. And so, around my third year teaching, I noticed that my students were retaining very important items, like little silly things like homonym issues, grammar things, that they were like getting huge deductions for. I noticed that, every text we read wasn't culturally relevant. Like, there was probably one Walter D. Myers book in the whole curriculum for most grades, and it was driving me crazy because our kids would retain if the items were about, them, and our kids would retain if they had ways in which to retain them that they found interesting. And so I started to create raps because I used to rap as a teenager. I did spoken word. Yeah. So I would create these little raps, like, to get them to remember the difference between there. Right, and I would get them to remember, you, the your and the your with the apostrophe. Like, it was really
And I heard,
it was. You think that those intricacies don't matter, what you don't realize is like a kid can write an incredible essay, right? And then there are schools that like on their rubrics have this grammar column, and so the content is grade level, but they're getting deducted for grammar. Right, and next thing you know, you have a kid writing a D- average that's really a B, right? Because that teacher decided that grammar was like important, and I wanted to be a Nazi about that. And I'm like, but the content is lit, though, right?
Exactly.
They understand, they comprehend,
like it's the whole picture.
Exactly, it's not like fair for you to. So when I was noticing these things, and there are teachers that are not of color that were like these huge grammar Nazis, or really obsessed with homonyms, or really obsessed with just. Not obsessed, rather, with the content that they were creating. I started creating these songs. And so there was a moment we had a state test, and they had to like call me upstairs because I got along with a lot of the kids really well to like get them to be quiet because they were talking during the test. And they're like writing in the test and they're trying to remember the words and how to spell them. And so they were rapping my songs. They're like, you gotta come upstairs, you gotta get them to stop talking because they're not talking.
You're like, but that's their memory.
It was so amazing, like, to walk down the hall and hear them like, rapping these songs. I was like, wow. Yeah, so I mean, they retained. I went from having a whole middle school cohort that was about 27% proficient when I came in to be like 73% proficient. Right, and that's been my record ever since. Like my data this year, my kids were 48% in the red. Like they were below grade level, and now that 48% has gone down to like 22. Right, because in less than a year. Like that's what I do. I come in, I teach rap songs. We analyze culturally relevant texts with the same Common Core standards. We cite evidence. We garner central idea, but we're not garnering central idea about just Percy Jackson or Maniac McGee. We're garnering central idea about the Black Panthers and their 10-point program. We're garnering central idea about, what's happening right outside of their windows. They come in every day. They want to talk about Jordan Edwards. They want to talk about Trayvon Martin, and no one wants to talk to them about that, right? But they're connected to those items, and they have death coming across their Facebook every day. So I break the rules, and I bend them. And, they say, we want you to teach this. I'm like, cool, I'm going to teach what I want. Yeah. Right?
And if you want me, you're going to let me teach what I need to teach.
Exactly. Yeah. And when the data comes, no one questions me because it works.
True.
So, yeah, I hope that kind of answered your question.
No,
incorporating spoken word and rap.
I'm just thinking, I'm like, where can we get that elsewhere? Like Rhode Island, I'm like, I'm sure there would be tons of schools that will love like systems like that.
Yeah, I mean,
are you thinking of branching out maybe in the future?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of programs that are like in startup right now for culturally relevant curriculum and just equitable curriculum, like diversity workshops. We're trying to teach educators how to get along with our children and how to utilize their history to connect with them and their surroundings to connect with them. And so every single one is in startup mode right now. And so, Langston-Lee, we specialize in equitable curriculum. I'm working with Building Beats right now, which is a program that creates curriculum for kids who want to be into music production and DJing. And then you have Brooklyn United, which is like a marching band program out here, and they're also the Nets band. So like they go and they play for the Nets during halftime, and so they're trying to build out like a curriculum because they have so many boys, like a mentorship curriculum that utilizes mentors' narratives as the instructional piece. And so I'm working with these organization so that they're more than just a craft. Yeah. They're also building those kids' skills, Common Core wise, so they can bring them into school. And so that's something I'd like to do nationwide. But really the dream is to have a school that incorporates this curriculum that I create on a regular basis.
Like the whole school is just based on what you're doing with these.
Yeah, they would have their core classes like math, science, English, etc. Yeah. But there would be, Black excellence where it's all Black history, and there would be, digital design, like I do graphic design and coding and whatnot. Okay. I would love for there to be a school with boys of color that incorporates all of the pipeline items that they're not reaching, right? Okay. So computer engineering, right? Activism, creative writing, etc. Okay. Right? To get more students involved in those items. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of charters that I've been immersed in put so much emphasis on sports. And I'm like, there's so much more. There's so many more pipelines for us to push them through.
And I think that our children want to do that, but they need to be invited and to say like, there's other people that do this if it is computer engineering or something. And that this person can teach you how to do it. Because I'm sure there are people that are interested, but people are saying sports, the way you're going to succeed is sports. So they're like, all right, I guess I have to give up what I truly want to do. So that's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. So, and also to go back a little bit, so you are an arts. No. That's great. So you do an arts educator, but you do spoken word. So how did you get into? I saw Rivaflowz.
Oh God.
Tell me a little bit about kind of how that got going and being a poetry slam champion.
Well, as a teenager, I thought I was alone in the whole journal in the corner writing by myself thing, because none of the girls in the suburbs were doing what I was doing, at my school at least. And so I remember, spending recess in elementary school writing poems, spending middle school in the library. I never went to the cafeteria. Like I was always in the library writing work. Okay. And so I needed to find somebody like me. And so I started searching like spoken word, poetry slams, and I found some stuff in the city. There's an organization called Urban Word. And they, every year, they vet 6,000 teens across New York City through preliminary, semifinals, and finals to get on a spoken word team that goes to like nationals. So I was like, 6,000 kids in a competition. Oh, I'm not going to win this. I printed it out, folded it up, put it in the corner, and left it. On the day of the slam, my dad found it, and he goes, this event is today. Like, why aren't you going? I'm like, I'm not gonna win that.
Parents going through your stuff.
And so he's like, oh, we're going. So he drove me. I did the prelims, got through prelims, got through semis, got through finals, made to nationals. 6,000 kids. We got through all of them. 6 of us went out to Cali, San Francisco in 2005. On my team were some prominent poets now, like Aja Monet, Scarell Cooper, Kesset Raheen, who else was on that team? And Jaylene Clark. Like they're, some of them are like world-renowned poets or MCs right now.
You're dropping gems. I'm like, I have to go through this and look these people up.
And so, man, we're the come-up team, 2005. And so we won nationals, and I was doing this hip-hop poem with Scarell, and one of the judges was Camilla Forbes, who was a producer at Def Poetry. And so she was like, we got to have him on the show. So she hit Russell up. Next thing you knew, freshman year of college, we're getting an email like, hey, we need you to come back to New York to be on Def Poetry. And we're like, what?
That is big, right? That's huge.
We did HBO's Def Poetry. Once we did that, it was over. I remember I had MySpace at the time. That episode aired, and then I went on my MySpace the next day, and I probably had about 500 friend requests.
Shout out MySpace!
I was like, whoa, like, this is what TV does? Yeah. And that was it. Like, I went from finding, like, this small community through Slam, to a national community through, like, the National Poetry Slam, to finding a worldwide community once we aired on TV. Like, poets from Australia, England, Canada, Mexico, like they were emailing us like, yo, we saw you on TV, and like, how did you get into this? And this is what I do, and listen to my poem. Like, it was hot. And colleges would call. So all through college, Monday through Friday, I was in class, and then Friday nights I was packing up a suitcase with my Norton anthologies and whatever I needed, and I was flying out to Houston to perform, to LA, to Chicago, to Atlanta, like on the weekends, and that's how, you know, I paid tuition, and it's how I also like paid for any other items that I needed. So what was really cool about going to Hampton was people were really family because I was never around. Like on the weekends I was gone. But during my senior year, I promised my parents that I would like stop performing for a year so I could really fall in love with my university and go to all the senior events. And this is how I know Hampton is family, because it's like whenever I show up to an event, they're like, we don't know your name, but you the poetry girl who's like always in class but never around on the weekend. I'm like, hey, y'all! Like, right? But that was it. And when I graduated, I worked with my junior year, I worked with a group home called Bella Girls, and, you know, they cater to young women who are transitioning out of the juvenile detention system. Okay. And so I taught them creative writing. And, you know, we went to some spoken word slams and whatnot. And so that was it for me. That was when I realized, you know, all my friends were taking the writer route. And I was like, no, I think I want to teach. Like, this is what I want to do. Okay. And so that's how the two became one, essentially. Yeah.
And I think what I love the whole story, but what I like the most is, so my podcast is about risk-taking and just doing something different and living in your truth. And so your father had to take a risk for you, because at that point you were like I love that he saw something in you that he was like, no, we gotta go. Like, that's huge, that he was just like, I mean, our parents feel like we're like the greatest thing since sliced bread, but he really saw your talent. That's awesome. And then from there, so how has having a worldwide community impacted your life, like feedback wise? And
feedback wise, as far as criticism, or
just like having a community from people that are outside of the United States or outside of New York. How has that kind of impacted your work?
Got it. It's so you get several views and several perspectives on items. I feel like anywhere I go, I know someone. That's one. So like college does that for you, but poetry really does that for you. Okay. Right? Like college is like, oh, hey, girl, I'm in the area. Let's grab some coffee. Like, oh, you're in Atlanta. Great. Right? Yeah. But poetry is like, hey, I'm in the area. Okay, cool. So my couch is ready. Yeah. You know, there's an open mic on Thursday and Sundays. We go into both of those. There's a brunch bar right across the street. Like, that's awesome. It's literally family. Like, writing brings us together, and being in the cipher with people from all walks of life. I've been to VONA, which is the creative writing workshop out I went when it was in Berkeley. Now they're having it in Philly this year. But it was at Berkeley. It was with Juno Diaz, with ZZ Packard, like some really prominent writers, Willie Perdomo, Faith Adiele. Like, I went to Callaloo, where it was taught by Ravi Howard for fiction, and like Gregory Palou's a Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry. And, you know, sitting in a cipher with like Joshua Bennett, who is like from upstate New York, but like New York to the heart, like spitting his fire. Elizabeth Acevedo, who was like Bronx but Dominican, and like has that whole, she can have a poem about rats in the subway, and then like a poem about like her kinks and her curls and how that correlates with where she's from, you know, with, you know, sitting with folks that are from West Africa, like they're from Ghana, they're from Brazil, like in that same room, and hearing those poems. Like, you're hearing everything from metaphors about the New York City subway rap to like, you know, being black or considered black in Brazil to like, you know, white men who are not really white men until they start spitting their poems and they start talking about their black fathers, and you're like, whoa, like I would have not known that you were not. Yeah, like, I know. Right? And so that's how it's affected me. It's opened up my eyes in several ways. When you sit in a cipher like that and everyone is from different walks of life, your writing like becomes undone, because it's not about you anymore. Like, you start realizing that a lot of the shit you were writing about is really superficial compared to what people are going through, right, in all over the world, in different societies, in different, you know, cultures, and they're saying it in different diatribes. Like, that's how it's affected me. So
it's opened you up culturally of like, wow, there's something more than New York. There's something much, much, much bigger going on. Wow, that's awesome. That's a blessing. Yeah, to be able to think and vibrate at that level, like to be able to comprehend different cultures, and good for you. Yeah. So of course, for folks that are like, all right, like you have to do spoken word, obviously I'm sure they want to hear things that you have. So we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna have Erica coming up with some spoken word. So stay tuned. All right, so we're about to get into it. So yeah.
This is what you aren't. You are no one's forgotten phone call. You are no one's wait around, no life on pause. You are no written journal entry, no spout of transcribed emotion when you could be soaking in warmth. You are no Netflix and Chinese on the first date. You are no convenience. No, this is my homegirl when you're madly in love. You are no sight through the slits of a high school locker. Your male best friend kissing his gorgeous girlfriend like you one day want to be necked. You are no times on first floors or anywhere else besides a bed. You are no overanalyzing. You are no jealousy. You are no dwelling on what could have been. You are no tracing of tongue along undeserving earlobes. You are no one-word text message. Okay? You are no avoided confrontation via any technology that reeks of you weren't man enough to do this face to face. You are no string along. No wait for me to get my shit together. You are no I love the both of you. You are no side chick, mistress, or imaginary friend. You are no abortion or miscarriage all alone. You are no silence. You are no disremembered sentiment. You are no label. She crazy, ridiculous, OD, intense, etc. You are no excuse for not growing the fuck up. You are no yelling until you cannot breathe. You are no shoulder for burden. You are no coming home to dirty dishes and garbage. You are no, I don't really cook. You are no double shift while he plays video games or hangs with the boys. You are no mystical being. You are no flawless imperfection. You are no broken-hearted conversation with your best friend. I just really want someone to love me for me. Cliche statement here. You'll find someone, girl. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Cliche response here. Maybe you're right. I just don't think there's anyone for me, but girl, I'm going to be good. Think, but don't say out loud. I'm going to look for it. Who the hell is waiting for something to come along when I've been sitting idle for an eternity? Screw your advice. Why did I call you in the first place? Hang up in your mind. You are no dial tone. You are no overused effort. Trying again and again. You are no attempt for affection that is unwilling. You are no accepting justifications. You are no uncharted territory. I don't really believe in foreplay. I mean, I don't do that, but you could do it to me. I don't dance. It's not really my thing. Sushi, black folks don't eat that shit. I never really learned and I don't really want you to teach me either. I'm set in my ways. I'm content. You are no one else's happiness unless you absolutely want to be. But this is what you are. You are wanting eyes. You are longing and lust all wrapped into one. You are passion. You are late night conversation with bathroom breaks and snoring on the other line. You are good morning, afternoon, and night. You are nervousness on your grandmother's couch while she tells him that she raised you right and he better take care of you. You are memories, daydreams that find their way to you in the form of lights. You are open thigh and brush of tongue, desserts fed to you. You are help me take out my box braids. You are farts under comforters and giggles of embarrassment. You are bridge. You are Ren and Stimpy over Rocco's Modern Life any day. You are nauseous, and if it is what we think it is, I'll run to a pharmacy and hold your hand all the while. You are juice trips to the fridge. You are dry mouth dehydration, but let's do it again. You are sheets and pillows everywhere. You are counting eyelashes when the sun hits his face. You are watching while you sleep. You are fingers and hair. You are breakfast in bed. You are special occasions. You are vacations and beaches. You are home even when you're not at home. You are home. You are football games you don't quite understand, but will rock the shit out of his favorite team's jersey. You are supported. You are good advice. You are rum and coke nights, tipsy in New Year's, panties and boxes in hallways on hardwood floors and nude in the twilight. You are human. Fragile and breakable, should be treated as such. You are small fingers and toes. You are I can't believe this is mine. You are womb and warrior. You are good enough. Worthy of being held until sunrise, soul food and the licking of lips. You forgot a spot, let me get that for you. You are lunch dates and roses, dinner by candlelight. You are indie concerts and Nike swishes on concrete, tapping to 808s and Kendrick. You are front row center. You are your favorite place in the world. You are permanent ink. Security and identity, you are knowing that there's something bigger and brighter waiting for you. You are foundation. You are surrender and vulnerability. You are allowing yourself to cry and throw things. You gonna be all right. You are slurs and drunken text, the good kind. You are goddess, Aphrodite, Arinrod, Diana, Freya, Sasaya. You are everything you have coming to you. So wake up.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So for folks that are listening to that is why I had to have Erica on my show. So we had heard, I think we heard that excerpt, I should say, at the event where we met. And so I feel like a lot of women can identify with that, a piece of that, maybe not every single piece of it, but I love that you bring people through what you're not and what you do not have to put up with and go to, this is what life could be like. And that there's people living, especially women of color too, that are living, in a happy space with people. So what inspires your writings?
Everything.
Yep.
So I've written 4 books so far.
Mm-hmm.
Of Micah and Men was inspired by a breakup.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a very serious relationship, engaged, and I never really dated. Like, he was like my first boyfriend and right out of college. And so it was like the time where I should have been immersed in the dating world. I was like booed up, and once that was over, I was like completely undone. I was like, what do I do? Like, I'm 24. Like, I'm jump back into the dating world. Okay.
Yeah. What is it
And
like?
so Micah was the central character, but of men, the rest, and men rather, is like the dating fiascos that happened afterwards. Like the dude who needed a green card and asked me that on the first date, or the cop who lived across the street that I met on Tinder, but he lived across the street.
I need to get that one. I need to get that one.
I can give you that before you leave.
Yeah. Okay,
but
cool.
you know, that was the inspiration for that. Actually, that was the second book. The first book was Intention, and that was like, I was on the train, and me and this guy were like making eyes. And this is why I was in a relationship, but he was fine. And I saw that he was writing, and I was kind of like leaning over and reading what he was writing, and it was dope. Like, and I was like, oh man, like, I'm in a relationship, behave yourself.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But I was like, yo, he's fire. And we had this really dope conversation. I never saw him again, but that's what inspired the book. He was wearing a jacket and like a hoodie, and he was writing, and like, you know, I was kind of like, at first I was like, oh, don't talk to me. Like, cause you know, he was like looking over, and I was like, just leave me alone. But then as I started to pay more attention, I noticed some really cool things about him. And then he leaned over and he was like, just ask me when I'm writing. You want to see? Like, I was like, oh man.
You're like, well,
like, yeah. So we started talking about poetry and whatnot, and I was going up to Harlem to visit a friend on this ride, and he got off at the Columbia stop, and I was like, he was getting up, and I was like, oh, you going to Columbia? He was like, yeah, I go to Columbia. He was like, you know, did you stereotype me? Shame on you. And like walked out, and I was like, no, right? But it was a really good story, and I told it as a short story. Yeah. And my friends were like, oh, we need more of this, so it turned into a book. About this girl named Amari and this guy named Khalil. And after Intention and Of Micah and Men came Boroughs Apart, which was I love Harlem. Like, I've been working there for years, and so. Good. I used to sit on Langston Steps. That's the front of the book is me on Langston Hughes Steps.
I saw that. Yeah. As you know, I've been reading your book, and so I read the first couple pages, and I got lost because I don't think I was reading it too fast. I just didn't realize every writer is different, so I didn't realize the moving parts. Yeah. And so Boroughs Apart, I think I would really suggest to people. I like that there's like a history part to it as well. Like there's like the relationship part, but also history. And I don't know, it blew my mind. So people get this book, Boroughs Apart. Look it up. But yeah. So sorry.
I used to eat my lunch every day on Langston Steps. Like when it was warm in Harlem, my school was right around the corner. And I was, in my mind, I was like, if I could soak up some of Langston's energy, like, maybe that's why I'm sitting here. But I started writing that book while sitting on those steps, and it turned into this, like, half modern-day Harlem love story to half Harlem Renaissance love story and how they were connected. And then, last but not least, I wrote F-Boy Literature, which is just a compilation of, like, blog posts, poetry, and, like, writings I've written over the years. That folks were like, put these together and make this a book. Yeah. Right now I'm working on Free Verse, which is a novel that is like the metaphor for the gentrification of Brooklyn. Okay. It's a love story, but it's really like if you're really reading, you'll see that the most prevalent theme is like the evolution. Like, you know, the girl, Jai is the main character, she goes away to school, much like me, and then she comes home and Brooklyn is a whole other place. Like you leave and it's like this cultural like,
even 4 years
blank, and then you completely come back in 4 years and they're like new condos where brownstones used to be, and you know the parks have a different shade of folks walking their dogs. You're like, what is going on? Where is my Brooklyn? And so she falls in love with two guys, and one guy is like this suited and booted, even though you know he's a black man, but he's not from Brooklyn, and he's I don't really like to call black folks gentrified because that's not real. But he does blend more with the new Brooklyn. And then the other guy is more like old Brooklyn. And so the love story is about like, who did she choose? Exactly. And so you can read it from two lenses. Like one lens is like, it's a love story. And she's choosing, it's a love triangle rather. And the other lens is like, it's literally a metaphor for like going home and seeing that home is not the same and trying to find parts of home that used to be, right? And so that is being shopped right now. I have an agent, so that's gonna be my first like book. Awesome. I'm so excited about that. And then Lucy is another novel I'm working on because Free Verse is done. It's just an editing phase. I'm working with a book doctor on it.
So we'll expect that later this year.
Yeah, that should be out soon.
Cool.
No, probably 2018.
Okay.
But Lucy is a novel about my family.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Juno Diaz's Oscar Wilde meets, Mama Day by Gloria Naylor. It's very much like a lot of like magic and the magical realism combined with my family's history. So my dad is Cuban, my mom is Jamaican, and there are a lot of like tales and myths about like, curses we've had on our family or things that people have said about our family. And like, I just always hear these little stories and I'm like, oh, these make good life.
I need to,
Right? So Lucy is about like a young woman who migrates from Cuba and to Jamaica and falls in love with a Jamaican boy, and her parents don't approve of it because she's like a white Cuban, which is my great-great-grandmother. Right? She's white Cuban, and she falls in love with a Jamaican boy who works in the cane fields, and it literally follows her like generations all the way up until now. Right? And so I went to Jamaica. It was a really cool trip because I went to vacate with my mom, and I was working on a book, and my dad flew down and didn't even know he was coming to surprise me. And like, I came in the room and he was like sitting on the bed.
Just
and I was like, whoa, like, what are you doing here? He's like, hi. Right? I felt like I could help you with your novel research. I didn't want you to do this alone. So we went to visit my aunt who lives on a hill in Westmoreland. And the hill has the gravestones from like my great-great-great-grandmother all the way down to like the most recent family member that has passed. And so she's walking us down the hill and telling us the stories, and I'm like, this is the book. Like, I had started working on it already, but I was like, these are literally the chapters, like generation by generation. And so that is the hardest book I've ever done. It's a lot of family interviews, a lot of research about like sugarcane fields back then, and like how that worked as far as like indentured servants and slaves and going back and forth. There was like which was how I found out about my family history. There was a trade happening between Cuba and Jamaica with sugarcane. And so my great-great-grandmother had come here with her husband to like capitalize on that. And that whole hill is like all sugarcane. Right? And so that's why they came. And so I was like, whoa. And I was like looking up old newspapers.
And you're into history already, so you must have been like,
it was crazy. Like my name is coming up in the newspaper. It's like Buddington's cane services. I'm like, what? Like it was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, it was really cool. I didn't know I was Jewish Cuban. I didn't know my great-great-great-grandmother was, of Jewish Cuban descent. Of one of the Jews that a descendant of one of the Jews that left the Holocaust and, came and migrated to Cuba and then had children there, right? Like, I learned all of that about my family in literally a weekend. It blew my mind.
A weekend? Yeah. I'm like, this must have taken her like a week.
This was a weekend. I went down and I had this aunt who lived on this hill and she knew everything.
Wow.
And I was just like recording and writing like crazy. Yeah. So I think that's the great American novel. Like Free Verse is cool. Yeah. But I feel like it's gonna sell like a Terry McMillan book. Okay. It's not gonna be like, then we gotta study this in colleges. I think Lucy is gonna be that book. Okay. So that's the one that's probably gonna take 10 years.
Okay. No, I'm excited for you.
So I hope that answered your question.
No, definitely.
That's what has inspired my work.
So everything meaning your life, like what's happening in your life, you put it in context and also history. So that's important. I like that. You're inspiring me to do some history check because that's really a manifestation of you. Like knowing what your history is makes you understand, okay, like that's why my parents are like this and this is why that happened. They moved here. So good. Well, as we wrap up, let people know where they can find you if they want to book you for their show, Hint Fashion Week, or anything. Let them know.
So you can find me, Erica Buddington, everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also ericabuddington.com, ERICABUDDINGTON.com. And if you want to find out more about the equitable curriculum and workshops that I designed for supplemental programs in schools, you can go to langstonleague.org, LANGSTONLEAGUE.com. .org, sorry.
And I'll be sharing and promoting, obviously. So people, if they miss that, just follow me and you'll get to her site. So, well, thank you for coming on my show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
And that concludes another exciting episode of The Business of Soul Searching. If the content discussed in this podcast interests you, please contact me at thebusinessofsoulsearching@gmail.com Also, make sure you subscribe. And most importantly, take a calculated risk this week. Don't do it for me, do it for you.
Somewhere, a door slammed. A giggle and grunt bounced from a window to my ears. It wasn't until I unwrapped my virginity years later, a belated Christmas gift to an ex-love, that I understood your breaking point. We were 12, running the urinated steps of your building, a maze for me, a burden to you. Men, still boys, jingled car keys as their thoughts lingered near our barely their bosoms. I understand now why you suggested that we start to ascend the staircases, never halting until I realized you stopped following me years ago. I saw your ghost, limp from a bodega laced in Timberlands and matted hair, heard whispers that sounded like your name from men who failed to keep you warm. I witnessed a figment of my memory glaze, rumors of trains, the tracks, your thighs, you're forever broken between them. I want the chance to apologize for never pulling that flag from your left pocket, force tying you to me and dragging your ass home, for never crazy gluing our fingers to those saxophones, for never being your keeper, nestling you safely in my pocket. I should have worn you like a wristband, told you that to live strong is to have survival engraved in your spine like your acrylics to undeserving henchmen. You were my everything, role model of a sister, the calligraphy of a typhoon, a connoisseur of reiteration. You told me stories of your Jamaica, palming a basketball in one hand, trying to balance your pride in the other, a mother of a 4-year-old with a son for eyes and poetry for lips, her father, a tribulation of your progression. I'm trying to get you to understand that love isn't wrapped in a dime bag or phallic fallacy cloaked in devilish smile. Your womb is still a galaxy. Stop giving the night your stars. Let those big dippers find their way home alone. The vernacular of a torn queen called me last night. A diluted version of you sung a pregnant melody and gave a birth to my withered compassion. I heard my name, separated by 3 syllables, the cracks filled with tears, and tomorrow, pictures suddenly began to flood my cerebellum like a tsunami of intuition. Puffy cheeks, kinks, a scar above her right eye with nothing to fear. I am keeping these fragmented notions of you safe, and if you ever need to find yourself, I've got you right here.